Welcome to Learning Life Skills Together. This is our weekly community Zoom meeting where our guests help us to go deeper into the 4 life skills and open up a huge array of chances to practice them. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our 18th community meeting. And I have with me Holly, who is our guest for tonight, and I'm going to introduce her after we do our practice. But Holly and I are going to collaborate on this practice. I'm going to bring us into our attention right here and right now, and then Holly is going to take over and bring our attention into our imaginations. So, if you feel like it, if you're ready, you could bring your attention just into your body right now, feeling your body wherever it is. If you're sitting, if you're lying down, if you're standing, just notice how you're connected. Maybe your feet are connected and you're standing up. Maybe your feet and your seat and your back are connected if you're in a chair. Or maybe you're lying down and you're connected and collected all along your back. So just aware of this fact that gravity is holding you in whatever posture you're in. Just noticing that you're being held. That maybe if there's effort happening in your body, you could let go of a little bit of it. Just be here. You might even notice your breathing happening. So the breath moves the body slightly on the in-breath, and then on the out-breath moves us maybe a little more towards rest. And so, Holly, when you're ready, you could come on in.
Yeah. Thank you, Don. Imagine yourself as a hummingbird perched on a branch. Do you sit in the shade to blend in? Or do you allow the sun to amplify your feathers like glitter? Allow yourself to take flight. Will you make a quick escape from where you are? Or hover and watch the world around you as you flutter in place? Allow the wind to sail across your body, pushing away your stress. You have freedom. Your fast wings will carry your tiny body anywhere, escaping from the pressures of life. Where do you go? Take a deep breath if it feels right, and then slowly exhale. Allow yourself to drift above your world. Leave your stress and anxiety below. Allow new ideas and energy to fill you up while on the wing. The bird's eye view can bring new perspective to our lives if we allow ourselves to momentarily detach and see things as the hummingbird. We all have wings. We just need to allow them to let us soar.
All right. So maybe just coming back again into the body where it is. Bringing your mind back in touch with where you're touching down and how you're being held. And you might then think about opening your eyes if they've been closed. And maybe you could find your way to your keyboard and put something in the chat about your experience with this visualization of being a hummingbird. So I'm going to share how it was for me, which I was really feeling the movement of the air around me and that invitation to just hover. And the just hovering has always fascinated me whenever I've seen hummingbirds. You know, I really wanted to do that, and I really wanted to see my world as if I were unattached to it. So that was really fun and relaxing. So that's what I got. I wonder if anybody else will tell us what happened for them. So meanwhile, let me say a little bit about Holly Merker, who is passionate about birds and birding, as if you hadn't guessed, and how she looks at how birding with the kind of attention that we're studying improves our mental and physical health. She's published 2 books on this sort of meeting of mental and physical health and birds, including Ornitherapy for your mind, body, and soul. And she also produces the Mindful Birding podcast. So we're going to learn more about her as our conversation goes on, because I want to try and find out how Holly got into birding, and in such a big way, I might add. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Don. I appreciate that. And hello, everyone. Um, well, it started for me as a child because I was always fascinated by nature and the birds that were coming into our yard, either to visit bird feeders, because my parents had bird feeders, and also bird field guides. So I was really curious. And that was the beginning. It sort of took me into opportunities because I had this interest to go to nature camp as a young teen or tween, as we call them today. And I learned a lot more. And that passion just kept getting fueled. And ultimately, when I was a young adult and in college, I was looking for ways to, kind of do something fun, but also relieve some stress. And I found that going birding, and particularly during that time, I went to school here in Pennsylvania. I visited Hawk Mountain Sanctuary, which was a wonderful place to go.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
yeah, and I found myself absolutely captivated by watching migration of birds. And so, Hawk Mountain Sanctuary is a place we can all still visit.
Yeah.
Yeah, at all times of year, it's amazing. So that sort of took me onto this deep dive into birding, and it has filled me up in so many different ways. It's really, I can't even really describe it because every facet of my life kind of revolves around birds at this point.
Yeah, no, it sounds like that. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
so is there anything that I left out that you're doing right now?
Well, in addition to the work with mindful birding, I also work with a lot of young people, and I do run a teen birding camp. And so this is something that is run through the American Birding Association. And there we have like a week-long experience. It's overnight. And this is where young people who are interested in birds can kind of foster that that love, that passion. But what's more is meeting like-minded other young people because, this is something
Yeah.
that it's harder to find people your age when you're younger, I think, that are also interested in birds.
Yeah, yeah. I think we have a picture of birders as being a particular type, at least the way the cartoonists draw us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
The fun thing is that is actually changing. So
It is.
since the pandemic, birding has become quite popular as a hobby or pastime. And what I love is that more people discovered birds during that time when we were all sort of forced to slow down. And when we
Hmm.
slow down, we start to notice, right?
This is it. Yeah, this is our attention skill, noticing what's out there. And so, noticing what's happening around us, noticing the birds. And then the piece that you're bringing in is what it does for us in our minds and our bodies and how that is healthy. And it's really kind of intriguing, that connection, because it's like the pandemic brought people to birding. They weren't ill, they just needed to find something to do that was maybe more still, find something to do that was a little more quiet. And so
Mm.
there was actually sort of healthful stuff happening as people discovered birding. So I'd really, I know that you've thought about this a lot and written about it a lot. So what are sort of your big takes on um, birds and birding? I'm going to separate the two because I think you might have a comment about both. Birds and birding and our one physical health, and
Mm.
then maybe we'll go down to the mental health side too. So
Yeah. Well, there's so much to tease out there, right? I mean, so when we think about birds and what they offer, I mean, birds are wonderful. They're perfect gateways into experiences in nature. What I love about birds specifically is that they are equitable, meaning that every human habitat we share with birds. So it
mm,
doesn't matter where you live, there are birds all around us. And that's what separates them from perhaps other creatures in the natural world or even landscapes, because sometimes we don't have access to big, lush green forests, right?
right,
Or
yeah,
teams. We might live in an urban landscape, and actually, urban landscapes, the birds there are so much more acclimated to people that you can approach them much closer and watch them. And it's really fascinating. So, birds offer a couple of different things as well. And one of them is their magical song. So, think about bird song. And at this time of year, especially, we're starting to hear a lot more birds singing first thing in the morning. I don't know if you've
hmm.
noticed that.
Oh, very much. They are very. I have a wren that is right outside my window every morning at about 5:30,
Oh, yeah,
letting me know that she is
absolutely.
there. Yeah,
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 that's your wake up call, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and this is a special time of year, especially for the birds. We're getting close to the nesting season, and so the amount of daylight is what helps provoke them to start singing. Their hormones
Hmm.
change, and they get excited. They're looking for territories. They're announcing themselves to find mates. This is why birds sing. But when birds are singing, and I should say that a bird's song is a stretched out melody, okay? Because some birds make calls, like you might think of a crow, which call, call, right?
Hmm.
Or blue jay, and that's a call. Whereas a song is this stretched out melody. So it's sometimes a repeating pattern, like your Carolina wren. It's a
Hmm.
tinkle, tinkle,
Yeah, yeah.
And so, but what's really neat is that when birds are singing, they feel safe. So what I mean by that is
Mm,
there's no immediate threat in their ecosystem right where they are. So for example, your Carolina Wren in your yard is not going to be singing his heart out if the Cooper's Hawk is nearby, right?
right.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And and other animals and other birds are very aware of that. And but guess what? So are we. Our minds, because we are animals too, we're kind of hardwired to recognize that bird song puts us kind of at ease because it's another animal signaling that there are no immediate threats in the area, which
Mm,
is really fascinating. And so there's a lot of science emerging, particularly in the last 5 years, with studies that suggest that just by listening to bird song, we can ease the grip of anxiety and also sometimes stop like irrational thinking, all
mm,
sorts of wonderful things,
yeah.
including bird song helps boost our overall feelings of well-being.
Yeah. Yeah. I can imagine that. So, one thing that immediately popped into my mind is yes, I can step out at 6 a.m. with my coffee and hear an awful lot of birdsong. And I have to say that I do feel different when I hear that kind of singing going on. Although we do also have a Cooper's hawk that shows up. But what I'm wondering about is if the song itself is what matters, or if it's the being in nature that matters, or if we were to play a bird song right now for everyone, would
Mhm.
that have an impact?
Yeah, so the studies are suggesting that it is actually the sound that we're hearing
Wow.
that, yes. And we know this because, for example, there was a study conducted by Cal Poly, and it was came out in 2020, and they had two control groups, and Group A and Group B both walked on the same trail. But in group A, they put out these little artificial speakers and broadcast what they called phantom bird song.
Okay.
And they did not do that for group B. And then when they did a survey afterwards, they could see a marked uptick in boosted feelings of overall well-being that could be directly correlated to that bird song.
Mm.
So they were both outdoors. I mean, we know that we benefit from
Yes.
being in green spaces that had, our cortisol starts to lower. It helps lower our blood pressure. There's so many physical and mental benefits of being outdoors, and particularly if it's a green space, it enhances these experiences. But we do know from all of these studies that are coming out that it's actually the song of birds. And the more birds, the better.
Mm.
There's a strong emphasis too on biodiversity and how important that is in human well-being as
Mm.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that we've been doing in learning life skills together is to really encouraging people to be outside and to walk. And that's kind of how we got to birding.
Mm-hmm.
Is birding is something that can just be there with you all the time. That's one of my favorite things about being a birder is that I never have to stop birding really, unless I'm asleep. It's wherever you go, there are
Yes.
birds. You go to Home Depot, there are birds inside, right? I mean, even in our big, indoor spaces, they find their way in. So I loved what you were saying about their equalizers, something like that. What was it?
Equitable. Yeah.
Equitable.
Same.
They're equitable, right? They go across every
Yeah.
possible place and person. They're available to everybody, and that's so wonderful
Mm.
because there's that opportunity to connect to nature There's that opportunity to hear birdsong too, and to feel that safety. And there's the opportunity of paying attention, which we sort of keep looping back to in this program, where
Mm-hmm.
our attention is our really sort of touchstone. It's how we can manage sort of, as you were saying, our stress. You brought that up. Our emotions generally. We're if we know what's happening with us, then we have a chance to do something with it.
Mm.
Right? We can regulate our emotions when we're out of balance. We can help ourselves get through tough times as well. And birds are something that seemingly millions of people discovered when things were tough, when we were on lockdown, So that sort of leads us into kind of the mental health dimension of birds. So I'm wondering if you had some science insights there for us.
Yes, well, we know that, as you were mentioning, these birds have this wonderful effect, but it's not just the birds. It's just, as you said, being outdoors is a powerful thing. And one of the things I think about birds, and this gets into a couple of different dimensions here, is that they allow us to be in that present moment. When we are captivated by birds, where say we notice some robins that are hopping around on our lawns at this time of year, or perhaps it's on the ball field at the schoolyard, we're noticing some robins hopping around. And as we're watching them, we're in that moment with them. We're not worried about our long to-do list or what we're supposed to do later. We're watching the birds, right? And they bring us to that attention that you're talking about. And that is really, really beneficial. So there's a lot of research out there that is coming along suggesting that allowing ourselves to access nature, to be in the moment with birds is beneficial to our overall well-being. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that moving forward, particularly, like I was mentioning, the strong emphasis right now is on bird song, but also the enjoyment we get when we're just watching birds. And studies suggest that we become more relaxed, more calmer, and we also just, we start to feel good because we're shifting our attention, we're redirecting our attention, giving ourselves a break. I like to see it as practice of self-care when we take the time to watch birds. I mean, let's face it, we are all busy, right? We all
Right?
have
Yeah.
different things to do. And it feels like if I take the time out of my day to perhaps it's even just look out a window for 10 or 15 minutes, or if I take a walk in a park, that maybe I should be doing something else that's more, what I might deem as more productive. Like I should be answering emails or making a phone call I needed to make, something knocked off my to-do list. Actually, research shows us that if we give ourselves that time to take that little break, to redirect or change our mental channel through nature, that's actually beneficial. And that when we return to whatever we were doing before, we will be more productive, will be more restored, and also some studies suggest even more creative. So
Mm.
actually in itself, this is a measure of productivity. It just looks a lot different than what we're used to be doing all the time,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And so there's a theme that we have sort of been coming back to again and again and again about the life skills that we're working on, and attention being sort of the one that covers all things. And going outside for a few minutes. You just talked about it. That we don't have to do things that are a big deal to get the level of change in ourselves. Stepping outside, looking up, seeing what's there. I mean, we had Tama Watts on a podcast a little while ago, and her book is called "Keep Looking Up," and so that's kind of a theme with us as well. Just go outside, look up at the sky, and things will start to shift. And then when you add birds in there, and you add bird song in there, and the whole sense of when the birds are singing, I'm feeling safe, and I'm not even noticing that I'm feeling safe necessarily. It's something that is gifted to me by the birds. So, I deliberately talked about what birds do for us and what birding does for us, because there is this thing that birds themselves are good for us, and then our interest in them is so good for us, and it's something that, as you said, is equitable among the generations. So, whether you're 2 or you're, 82, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You're having that same experience in the moment with that bird, and the bird is drawing you in. That's what I loved about what you were saying about. So you look over and there's birds on the field, and
Mhm.
you just start to watch what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're not doing anything that we would do. That's one of the things that's intriguing. And the other one is that they fly, I have to say. So when I see a hawk or a vulture, we have lots around here in Chester County, circling, and I look, I just watch, I feel what's happening with me as being getting lighter and being drawn out of, the cares of the day for 2 minutes, 30 seconds, whatever it happens to be. But there's a shift that happens. And it's something that we offer ourselves. It's something that we offer the people we're with. And when the people that we're with are kids, we're really moving into that area where we're sharing our skills. And so that's what we're after. So,
Mhm.
so what I also really want to talk to you about, since you do this work with kids, is how do you get them interested? What are some things that we can do? What are some strategies that we might consider? It's like, here's my child. They're in the room. They're sitting there. They're listening, looking at a screen of some type. And I'm thinking, we should take a 5-minute break from this and do something. So how do you think that through?
Yeah. So, I mean, the wonderful thing about kids is that they have an innate curiosity, right?
Yeah.
And they're always learning and interested in seeing something new in that process of discovery. And I think that even if we just share a cool fact, something we noticed, if we're making a connection with them and inviting them to share with us something they're seeing. So, even just as you were saying, it doesn't take much time getting your kids outdoors. Perhaps you have a bird feeder in your yard, or this is a great way to start. It's something that helps. And when I work with a lot of kids, like I was saying, and I often ask them what got them started with interest in birds. And a lot of them will say, well, we had a bird feeder, or I read lots of books about birds. I mean, that's another hook right there. Or a grandparent took them
Mm.
birding, got them interested that way, or perhaps it was a parent. And so it's just taking these small quantities of time where we invite somebody to come outside with us and just start to notice. And perhaps it is the turkey vultures that are kettling. That's the word we
Mm.
have
Yes.
when hawks or vultures are swirling around in that soaring kind of pattern that they will see them in, especially on sunny days, and asking your child, so what do you think they're doing? Asking them what they're noticing about the birds, asking them would they like to be on the wings of that bird, riding on their
Yeah.
backs. And if they say no, or perhaps yes, then ask them questions about that. So I like to, when I'm working with young people, invite them to share with me what they're seeing a lot of times because they're seeing things I'm not going to see. And I've been looking at
Yeah.
birds for a long time.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
teach me
No.
something, which
Yeah.
is really wonderful. And so it's allowing them to have a voice in this conversation about birds. And you don't
Mm.
have to know anything about birds to see something or notice something special.
That is so important to think about as you're thinking about getting the kids involved, thinking about, oh well, maybe the family could, add birding in as something that we do. And you did not say in all this time that you were talking what the bird was, what the
Right.
name of the bird was, right? It wasn't about identifying the bird, it was about watching the bird and what it was doing. That
Hmm.
was for me the thing that got me into birding. I read a book. I did the other kind of birding. I was heavily into identifying. I had lots of guides and everything. And this book just, I don't know, must have read it 50 years ago. And it said, just take a lawn chair out
Mm.
to, a nice place that's reasonably quiet, put it down and watch and just
Mm.
see what you see. And
Yeah.
yeah, and see what the actions are, see what happens. Then you will actually know about robins,
Hmm.
not just their coloration or their call, but yeah, how they really are, what their personalities are like, what's going on with them. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I love that concept. And we call that sit spots in
oh,
mindful birding.
okay.
The spot where you just sit down and just quiet your body, quiet your mind through nature. And it's this heightened awareness where we're tuning into our senses, we're noticing what we can hear. Sometimes, if I'm doing this with a group, if I'm leading a mindful birding exercise, I invite people to close their eyes or set them at a soft gaze and just listen and
Mm,
stretch your ears as far as your ears can stretch out. And what are you noticing? Are you noticing patterns? Are you noticing melodies? And then, it's amazing what you hear when you actually take the time to sit there and listen. And when
yeah,
you're in a sit spot, it's easy to do that because you have nowhere else to be but the right here and right now, right?
yeah, yeah. No, totally. That's what I really like about it is that it's cheap.
Yeah, you don't need. Also, what I haven't noted or haven't said today is that you need to go buy a pair of binoculars,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
For fancy tools. So you don't need to have, you're already equipped with everything you
Yeah.
need to be a good observer, right? And you don't,
Absolutely.
while binoculars and those types of tools, it might enhance your experience. Also, just closing your eyes and listening or using your eyes to see as far as you can see, like we are talking about, noticing birds on the ground, or perhaps it's noticing birds in the sky and how they're flying. Perhaps it's the pattern of their wings, how they're beating their wings, or maybe they're not beating their wings at all. and just
Mm.
noticing these things. And so, yeah, birding is very accessible. Like you said, this is something that I take with me wherever I go. If I'm, yeah, grocery shopping, or perhaps I'm going on a vacation, or I'm traveling to a new country and I'm noticing birds. And that adds an element of surprise and discovery and joy to every part of my day. And
Yeah.
it's crazy, right? A little bit.
Yeah, no, well, I think what's wonderful is, in a lot of the ways that we talk about stress reduction, stress management, that kind of thing, it's like we're making a choice. Okay, now I'm going to adjust myself. Now I'm going to do this. If you're a birder, you're just going through your day and you get adjusted. You get adjusted just driving down the road. Now there are some highways around here where my wife and I will just count the number of hawks we see sitting on poles and sitting on trees, just looking over the fields and getting ready for something. And so that's each time one comes up, each time it's like a little lift for you if you're a birder. So all the unexpected stuff that comes to you, you don't even have to go get it. You don't have to go, it's just like you say, a trip to the Acme, and there you go. There's a bird. Whoa. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
just being.
I've been changed. I've noticed something, and I've noticed how I feel, from it, which is
Mhm.
that's that basic skill of attention. Yeah. So it's wonderful to bird by yourself, and I like to do that. I like to just go for a walk somewhere where I know I'm not going to really run into anybody else, and it'll just be me and the birds and whatever else happens along. I'm not averse to a muskrat or something in the creek. That's kind of fun too. But we do things by ourselves. We do things maybe with a child or two, but there's a community of birders. And this is another thing that's important to me about birding, is that there is a community of like-minded folks who do gather to do this thing. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how that is. I mean, your camp with the tweens is really cool because here are people sharing this thing. But what are other ways that people share birding or
Yeah.
birds or however we look at it?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. So we are lucky here in Pennsylvania because there are many active organizations devoted to birding. And what's more is that birding groups love to show people birds and to get people engaged in watching and discovery and learning. I think our state has probably more active birding organizations than most in the United States. We're
Mm.
very lucky for that reason. Pennsylvania itself is known as the cradle of American ornithology because Philadelphia was always a stronghold for scientists and
Mm-hmm.
ornithologists
Yeah.
throughout the history of this country. Um, but Pennsylvania has many different organizations, starting from like a statewide organization, the Pennsylvania Society for Ornithology. And, ornithology is a fancy word that means the study of birds, but you don't have to be even an ornithologist, and most people are just amateur bird observers or bird lovers or birders, whatever you want to call it. And I have to say, somebody who loves birds and loves watching birds is a birder. You don't have to have a life list. That's where you count off as
Right.
many species as you can. You don't have to have fancy tools like binoculars or spotting scopes or any of that to be a birder. And and another word for this is also bird watcher. We like to use the word birder though, because bird watching suggests that we're watching with our eyes. However, sometimes we're just
Mm,
listening, right?
right.
And word birder suggests we are actively aware of birds. We're loving birds. So we're listening and watching. However, birds might come to us because actually there are people who are deaf birders and there are people
Mm.
who are blind birders. Believe it or not,
Oh, sure.
birds are so accessible. And so in Pennsylvania, not only do we have an overarching statewide organization devoted to the hobby of birding, but we also have many different regional and local groups. So each county has either an Audubon Society or they have a local bird club. Here in our region of southeastern Pennsylvania, we have many. We are so lucky. And you can go to all of them. You don't even have to be a member. All of their walks and events are free.
Mm,
Yeah, which is really cool.
yeah.
So some of them in our region have young birders groups. For example, the Valley Forge Audubon Society, look them up. They have a young birders program. So does the Delaware Ornithological Society. They have a young birder program there. And you just Google these organizations. And the Delaware Valley Ornithological Club, which is based out of Philadelphia, but services all the surrounding counties. Perhaps you're in Montgomery County. The Wingcote Audubon is over there.
Mm,
They have many different opportunities. Here in Chester County, we also have, in addition to Valley Forge, which services Chester County, we have the Westchester Bird Club. I mean, I could go on and on.
hmm.
Another organization I want to mention that offers something called is the Willistown Conservation Trust, which is basically on the border of Chester and Delaware counties in Willistown, not far from Media. And they have a program that's for children ages 7 to 12 called Rushton Nature's Keepers. And there, young people can learn about all sorts of things in nature. Because, if we love birds, we also have to know that we have to take care of and learn about what birds eat and all the
Yeah.
plants, everything's connected, right? And that's what makes it so exciting. So in our area, there are many different communities that are excited to share the love of birds with others. So I invite everybody to check out what's near you.
Yeah. So how would I know um, how to connect to a group that would let me bring my little ones? If I've got 5-year, 6-year old,
Yeah,
and I
so
want to
well,
get started, and I don't feel like I can do it myself, even though I want to say to everybody, you can.
yeah. Absolutely. So if you're asking about local groups, I would get in touch with them and share that you want to get your kids involved. You want to bring them out for an experience. And I'm so sure, knowing all of these different groups, that they would be more than welcoming. And many of them have different events. Again, Delaware Ornithological Society, which is northern Delaware, so very close to Chester County and also Lancaster County. Lancaster County also has a bird club as well, I should say. And so you'll be able to find out what's happening. All of them have a schedule of events. Many of them offer family-friendly events to attend. I would definitely look into Willistown Conservation Trust, even Natural Lands around here. Many of our organizations are trying to bring kids into the fold because they are our future. They are the birds' future. And
Hmm.
we know that kids can make a difference. I'm super optimistic about the future of our world because of the kids I meet. So many of them are passionate and caring and are good stewards already. And so I'm not alone in that. A lot of these organizations want to have more young people. So if you're a parent out there looking your kid involved, go for it because you'll find that the birding community is very welcoming and excited to have young birders along.
Yeah. All right. So I think at this point, what I'd like to ask you, Holly, is if you have any words of wisdom from your sort of lifelong tour of birding. What are the things we should remember, or one big thing we should remember?
Well, I'd have to say that if there's one thing to keep in mind is that the birds can always be there for you. Whatever you're going through in life, whether you're having a bad day, a good day, birds are non-judgmental. You can go watch them. They're not going to judge you for how you feel or perhaps how you look or whatever's going on in your life. You can just sit there and be with the birds and have that experience where you can feel grounded and you can feel restored. You can find joy in just watching them. And so it's taking the time to practice self-care through awareness and that attention to birds and the natural world. And so even if it's just a few minutes a day, the studies suggest that this in itself is incredibly positive. The doctors out there that are actively prescribing nature in some other areas of the world,
Right.
yeah, they're saying, after 20 minutes of exposure to nature, our cortisol levels start to lower, and we start to feel better. And so give yourself a couple of minutes each day. If you can get out there for 20 minutes, that's when you're going to see the most benefit. But even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes, like we were saying, just to look out the window, if that's all you've got, if you can just look out a window or just give yourself permission to do that. And I think that's my word of wisdom.
All right. Well, thank you. And a wonderful word of wisdom it is too. And so I just want to thank you for this. And I'm hoping that we can maybe get from you a list of some of these places to connect with. And we'll put your books up and your podcast and help people get connected in that way as well. So thanks so much, Holly.
Well, thank you, and happy birding, everyone.